You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. Now, the largest new media platform on the web and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith. Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and Bing.com, and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is AfterBuzz TV's Boardwalk Empire After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. If you'd like to buzz in on tonight's show, you can buzz us at 424-256-1729. That's 424-256-1729. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's Boardwalk Empire After Show.
Nice. So you can tell Marissa is back on the board. In comes our music. Bing is for doing, and we are doing Boardwalk Empire here at AfterBuzz TV, Season 3, Episode 4, entitled Blue Bell Boy. I'm your host, Keven Undergaro, and I'm without Bethany. However, I have a replacement here. Your name?
It's Kristen Carney. Hey, guys.
Hi,
hey.
Kristen Carney. And, of course,
it's my Irish side.
Before we get into it, I have my attorney with me and my co-host.
Ebony K. Williams, guys.
Ebony K. Williams.
You're going to have to step in as my attorney,
So,
I have a feeling, too.
And then, once again, I'm surrounded by beautiful women, and I love it. Does that make me misogynist as well as racist for saying that? Ebony, you have to defend me, so please.
I'm instructing my client
Makes
to
you
be
human.
complete as fifth. Silent on that, Kevin.
Silent? Okay,
People
thank
confuse human with racist.
Okay, so tell me, before we get into it, because we another amazing episode, but tell you were saying you have some...
I have some family that was kind of miniature mafia, I guess you could say, in upstate New York. My grandmother and her mother and father started the only speakeasy essentially in the area.
Okay.
So they made their own moonshine. I grew up hearing stories about it, but my great-grandfather eventually was killed by the mafia. The only thing that they would really say, because my grandmother would lose it when anyone would bring up her father, and they would only say that they tied bricks to his feet.
Ooh.
Like,
and it was over the alcohol and business.
Yeah.
And you're Sicilian.
I'm part Sicilian.
I'm part Sicilian as well, and that is a big part of tonight's episode, which we'll get into when we talk about Lucky and Meyer and Masseria. And I'll tell you, again, getting myself into more trouble. I knew people that were from Italy, and if they found out you were Sicilian, they'd be like, "Get out of my house!"
Oh,
Get out! It was.
Our family's still, they're small-time crooks kind of nowadays, but back then
the Sicilians can be a very scary group, or at least they were thought of.
But my grandmother was in with the cops. She always was making them pies and cakes, and they were always over for dinner. And it was just because, it was always brushing under the rug that they were the criminals in the area.
Local cops they usually can play ball pretty well, as we see on this show.
Yeah. And
it's the feds that they're tough to get the feds.
Yeah, but the small-time cops, they were there
they're
drinking
great. They're the
just
best.
as well. Yeah.
To this day.
Yeah.
To this day.
Yeah.
To this day, lots of them. Okay, so before we get into, like, the real juicy, amazing stuff, we got to touch on Margaret, Dr. Mason, their relationship's advancing. Very funny scene with the sister, who doesn't want to hear the word vagina, doesn't want to hear the word pregnancy.
Right.
Sounds
like my mom.
Yeah, no Kotex.
And the fact that Kotex, I
thought that was neat.
Isn't that very cool?
Yeah.
Yeah. Still a brand, still around.
Yeah.
Still around, and you probably a little kickback. Hopefully HBO got off that like they do on Mad Men. But, very interesting that it was just invented, and and she's like, "Can they sell these?"
Right. Openly, right?
Right.
Really nice. Like, I love the tie back to the time, and Mike August, who's one of our super fans, who gives me most of the great stuff that I'm able to espouse here. But he was saying how cleanliness was a resonating theme throughout this episode.
Yeah, it was.
So we see that that's what caused all the miscarriages and the problems, and obviously Kotex, and then we see what happens with Al Capone later.
Right.
Poor Margaret out in the boulevard trying to get people on board.
Yeah.
She's not getting much love, and then she deals with the lady that kind of lit the wick to
Yeah.
this whole movement.
I think we now have an answer as to why the woman who had the miscarriage was
Shearer.
Edwina Shearer.
Right.
And now I understand why she's been so cold to Margaret. It's because of her husband's views on women's health. Because when Margaret went to speak up about, hey, there's a women's seminar going on, that's when Edwina, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, gave Margaret the look like, don't say anything. Don't even bring it up. And you could see almost this sympathetic exchange between Margaret.
She's like, I get it now.
Yeah,
Yes.
like, okay, I feel you.
So
I see why.
You're with this big bully
Right.
who just wants you to be a baby machine,
And
right?
it almost reminded me of Margaret's old husband, who
Yes.
Nucky killed in the beginning.
Yes.
He gave me that vibe. They're, lower class, they don't have it very easy, and he was abusive towards Margaret. And I think she just saw that energy between them and backed off.
And she's being the responsible one, much like Margaret was, or trying to be, even about buying the candy.
Right.
And he's like, no, whatever. So buy the unhealthy snack, waste
Right.
the money,
Right.
and let's have more kids
As soon as
irresponsibly.
she's ready. I had a real conspiracy theory moment for a second where I was like, I wonder if she knew what she was doing and if the miscarriage was self-induced. And I don't
yeah.
know,
Oh.
but I had that moment.
Because she seems like a smart
And she
lady.
said, I know all about it. Remember that line where she was
Oh.
like, I know all of it. I know about all of it.
Very good.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's interesting. You're right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her husband said, when she's ready, maybe we can do it again. So maybe she wasn't ready. Maybe she didn't
Right.
want it.
Right.
So that could back up your theory.
But I
perhaps.
think you might be right.
Yeah.
So have we seen the last of her?
I don't think so, for sure not.
I don't know. I feel like I got my piece from her. Like she kind of, to me, seemed like she played her role. We get it. It got the word out that women
Speaks to
weren't
the time.
progressive.
Mhm.
Right. And I feel
Held
like
down by the men.
her duty is now kind of over as a character to me. I don't see pulling her back in, making any real. I don't think she would team up with Margaret or anything.
It's these shows are so thick and so layered, and we were talking about it before we went up on the air about how when we watch this, we have to block off the screening room, and you have to be so intense, and the fans are very unforgiving to us when we miss things. But it's really hard to pick. There's so many characters,
Yeah.
so many subplots.
It's a big responsibility
and
we have here.
It's huge.
Yeah.
But even the fact that women and women's rights and women's power is such a resonating theme last season and especially
Yes.
this season. Every episode
Yes.
is dealing with that. And of course we're still going to have all the mafia wars and the rise to power and the politics, but we're seeing that every single episode there is, the women trying to, rise up. And we see it with Jillian, we
Right.
see it with Margaret.
Right.
Even I don't want to jump around, but even when when Owen was in bed
Katie.
with Katie,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you see how she's just like, nah, be late.
Yeah.
Did you
she
see
had
that?
it
She's-
literally by the
Yeah.
you know what.
Yeah.
Right.
And she's
And
like,
then with Van Alden's
Right.
wife
Right,
from
we're
last
seeing-
episode.
So we're
Yeah.
seeing it, and it was interesting though in the final shot to see the newspaper article where poor Carrie's plane went
Yeah.
down in Yosemite.
Well, I think that really symbolizes just kind of the melancholy, just unraveling of everything from
I
this
think it-
episode.
Yeah, it kind of grounds Margaret too. Like
Because-
there's going to be, some backlash and some not so fairy tale endings with this whole thing you're taking over for sure.
Right.
Because when we saw the plane flying by a few episodes ago, there was a real sense of hope
Right.
and growth. And now that it's down, you're feeling that, Al Capone, even though, I don't want to jump around either, but there was a sense of just kind of sadness over the whole episode, a tone.
Of your weakness, of weaker people, kind of being beaten down.
Right.
It definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Which was appropriate, right? Because October's National Anti-Bullying Month.
Is it really?
It is. It is. And I thought that was very appropriate for
feel like
Al
every
Capone
month should be
to
anti-bullying.
advocate for
I think
that.
every month it feels
Every
like,
month
But by
is
the
like-
way, so
yeah.
the whole bullying thing, it's like well, you'd have to really be an asshole to be
Right.
not behind an anti-bullying
Right.
campaign.
Right. Like,
I'm pro-bully.
cancel
Right,
it.
right. So it's so hard that it's so in your face. It's so
Yeah.
in your face.
I was bullied, and I'm sick of hearing about it.
Right.
No,
I was too. I think
Yeah.
we all. I don't know many people who weren't.
Yeah.
Especially in Hollywood. My God, it's what drives all
That's
the
why we're
psychopaths out
here.
here.
Right.
Right.
I put myself in that category.
But it's funny. I know you're a huge Corolla fan like me, and he makes an interesting point that with the anti-bullying people are such bullies
Right.
now
Right.
in the reverse.
They're swapping roles.
So it's interesting,
Yeah.
and of course we saw that tonight to a degree.
I do want to say this about
Go ahead,
Margaret,
please.
though, real quick, about Dr. Mason, because, you know, obviously we're seeing Nucky, you know, with Billy. I think Margaret, obviously there might be a thing of like, is Dr. Mason going to, are they going to hook
I've
up?
been saying it. What do you think?
I think they are, because I think Margaret's going to realize that someone else who's involved in causes that she's also interested in is going to be a major turn
They're
on for
working
her.
together.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
And
I can see them.
Yeah.
I liked
hooking
her
up.
better with him than Owen.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
You know, to
Yeah.
be with a
Owen-
doctor who's educated, and
Yes.
you know, I feel like it's sad because the series, most of these series end in a very tragic way, or like you said, a melancholy way, or it's just always kind of an ironic ending. We'd like to see her with him, but it just seems like when the road with the good intentions, the road of hell, you know,
Is paved.
I feel like
Yeah.
it won't work out
It's
that
not going to
way.
be neat. Yeah.
Where she ends up with her doctor, because it would be perfect down
Yeah.
the road. But I don't know. I mean, we will wait and see. In the meantime, please this week go to iTunes and continue to rate and comment on us. There weren't. Oh no, I wasn't a racist. I'm someone
Yeah.
of privilege. No, I grew up in privilege.
Okay. That's still
So-
a victory, Kevin.
Yes, is that a victory?
That's
Do we
a
take that
victory.
as a W?
We take that one for the team. That's
Nice.
a W.
Okay,
Yes.
good. But I was telling you guys, like my poor dad, who died like at 54, was like a construction worker, like
Right.
so not someone of privilege.
Right.
They were right about one thing. I grew up in a very Italian neighborhood where it was all Italian, Irish, Catholic,
Right.
and then I went to work in the Carney business, which was everything. I mean, there wasn't a type of person that I didn't deal with for 10 years and sleep next to and live with. And then, of course, one of the things in Hollywood that's very cool is we are a melting pot. We have
Yeah.
every type of person in this business. And some of the most notorious, meanest people I've met are also still very open
Right.
because they can do business with
Right.
other ethnicities or genders or whatever.
Right.
So it's very interesting. I mean, there is a bit of a boys' club out here, but I think that's and being with Maria Menounos, you know, working with Maria,
Right.
I see that, and that sucks. But I don't see. We don't get for all the crap we do in this business. We don't get a lot of credit for the fact that we do work together
Yeah,
very well. There's like a lot. Even
There's
like
an underlying like, okay, we're all cool
yeah,
together.
even like Sinatra, who you would think would be the worst. Like you would think he would hate gays and he would hate commies and he would hate blacks, and yet he was always the one who took up for
Civil rights causes.
civil rights
Right.
causes,
Sure.
left-wing writers who were thought as pinko. He'd be the
Right.
one to
Yeah.
give them their job.
Yeah.
Gay
Right.
people. So it's
Yeah.
kind of the cool thing about this business. Anyway, whatever. Another bad tangent. It's not for this show, but please keep
Bottom
going.
line is rate and comment.
Please rate and comment. Go to iTunes. It really helps us a lot, and we like are all obsessed with this show. We're all so excited for our Sunday night.
But I do want to say this also. Race plays a huge part in this show.
Huge.
Oh,
Oh
So
my God! It was all over the
Just
show.
talking about race
Right.
doesn't mean it's racist. You know, it doesn't make
Right.
just because it's a racial
But I
category.
joke. But sometimes I do. Fuck
See,
around.
my
Excuse my
my
language.
threshold for being like offended is so like high. I don't
Right.
get offended by anything, so I just see it as a
But
discussion.
you're right. But you're right, and you can't. We can't.
We can't ignore that stuff.
And we can't ignore it, and
I
we can't,
know.
you know, I even have friends in the business that got off Twitter that, I don't want to say the names, but they're celebrities or they're broadcasters, and it was actually affecting, what the fans were saying was affecting how they were saying, and
Right,
they had to
that's
shut
not
it off
good,
because
yeah.
you're right, I'm glad you said that, because especially when we get into Lucky and Meyer, you know, you can't avoid the whole race thing.
No,
It's just the
huge.
Irish and the Italians and the Jewish and
Right.
the, and
It's
the
what made the
blacks.
country.
But
Yeah.
this show itself is just, it's boiling.
Right.
So
Right.
we definitely can't get around it. And when we do finally, you know, talk about New York, there's so much more, and there's so much history involved there that involves race that I'm going to get into. Anyway, but like I said, please rate and comment on us when you can. All right, so I loved Al Capone.
Yeah.
Kevin
This
was
I
Yeah.
loved Chicago.
He makes kicking people's butts pretty acceptable in my moral book in a
Well,
way, because he's such a
He's kind of an
likable
underdog kind of figure.
Right.
on this show,
On this show.
in this
the way they portray
portrayal,
him.
right, not
Exactly.
in real life.
He's as
but-
I am saying weekly. He's a Muppet baby.
Yeah.
right.
He's in his
right.
Muppet baby
He
face.
is, yeah.
It's
Perfect.
gangster babies with
Yeah.
him and
Gangster
Meyer and
babies.
Lucky. But it was what I liked was, you know, his character is always portrayed. It seems like in Hollywood as such a brute.
Right.
And from my research on him, he was very brute-like.
Yeah.
But most of those guys do not get to power without having a charm or being charming. They just don't. They have to have something to them. And they also, all of these guys that, at least the guys that I worked with back east that were mobsters, they all had this like strange sense of justice.
Sure.
Right.
It was, you know, it wasn't just about, it was mostly, it was about the money, but then they always had this thing where like, you know, this one guy I knew, the neighbor would complain to him like, oh, my daughter's dating this guy and he's hitting it. What? And then like they were all over it. It had nothing to do with money.
Well, it's almost like Masseria said about the heart. They have a lot of heart.
Yeah.
You know, and might come out in the wrong way to the general public, but everything they're doing, they justify as morally correct.
Right. So I like that. We saw touches of it on The Sopranos, but I've rarely seen that in Capone.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see it, and you know, we all knew it was coming, right? We knew.
Well, because the writers did a great job of obviously setting up this scenario where he couldn't get, you know, this protective feeling towards his son, like that wasn't working, so he had to have another outlet to kind of be the protector.
Right.
And you know, Gusick or whatever, you know, gave it to him for sure.
And what great directing, because you know, he couldn't even get the words out of the story.
He was gone.
Gone. It was done.
Right.
It was you know, once he said, I can't help it, just like the son can't help being deaf.
Exactly.
And what a sweet moment with the son where he just stopped. He knew the kid wasn't a fighter, and the kid, and he just hugged him. It was really nice. And I don't like the black and white characters, meaning the totally evil against the total good guy. I love the shades of gray, and to see that.
We saw a few seasons ago him being really tough on his son and not really backing down. He was really cold to him. You know, he's stupid, and you didn't see that soft side. So when they showed this, I thought to myself, no, please don't have him be really mean to his son again, because it's not going to make me want to be on Ale's side at all.
And you know what? I believe that he wouldn't have been mean to the son, because what I knew, and I know there's an actress by the name of Rosemary from the Dick Van Dyke Show. It's way back. And she had a whole career as a 3-year-old. She was known as Baby Rosemary, and she did vaudeville. And she actually met Al Capone. She tells the story all the time, where he quote said, the wife wants to meet the kid. And so as a little girl, she was marched into his dining room, and it was, she said it looked like a 100-foot long table. You know, she was a little kid, but she said there were 20 or 30 people at the table, so clearly it was very long. And she said nothing but loving and amazing with the kids. It was, look what Daddy did. You know, his little. So I'm glad that we got to see that. You know, he would be, because you know, Italian parents, they are. You know, I just buy it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
From my experience with, I buy it, and what I've read, I buy that he would be tough on the kids, but he would have a soft side.
But you gotta have some humility, right? Because it's to your point, Kevin. To lead, people have to want to follow.
That's it.
Right. And because he is in his Muppet Baby stage, he's still got a heart. He's not as hardened as he will be as an older man.
But I think he'll always have a heart.
Always
with
have
it.
that humility. Because people always have to be motivated to follow him and kind of take. And I think we're going to see that from Nucky too. He at some point is going to have to.
Well, Nucky always had that kind of charm, and now we see it's going away with him. So I like when it comes back. But we're seeing it go away, and we'll get into Nucky later, and we'll also get into Jip later. But even Jip shows that bit of charm.
Oh yeah.
You know, he shows it a little bit, like he shows it with the waitress, or he shows it with Jillian. When he needs to get what he needs, he can show enough of it. So it's like, I think a lot of times a good writer will get that with a character, with a bad guy villain. A bad writer won't. But there's always, if you think about some of the biggest successful assholes you knew, they all have this. Even in Hollywood, they all have this like kind of charm about them. They can make you laugh. They can make you want to do things for them.
They'll kind of be mean to you, but at the same time, they're like your elder, and
they'll have moments, where they can pull you in. So I really love seeing it. I love seeing the moment with him and the son. And it, you know, again, I guess because I'm just still at the end of the day, I'm a guy who likes, you know, kick-ass stuff. I enjoyed seeing the bully get his head
Just
squashed.
desserts. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome.
The way he, threw maybe one bill and then another bill, and then just eventually threw the whole wad and said, "Take care of the funeral," was so amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I think
That's what
I
I
don't know if
live
you-
for right now in my life.
I don't know if you
Just
guys
moments
heard
like that.
me say that, but I said, "Oh, the money's coming out." Even before he made the reach,
Yeah.
Right.
I knew because it's
Yeah.
always that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about back then is that you do something so horrific, but yet there's still that character and charm that goes along with it, which is what we've just been mentioning. But he puts on the hat, grabs the jacket, says his goodbyes. He doesn't run in with a mask and just
Well, he
beat
said
him over
it
the
when
head
he
and run
talked
out.
to the guy, right? Presentation's everything. Appearance is
Right.
everything.
Right.
So we kind of saw that.
So
as
yeah,
well.
the full circle of
Yeah.
and and it's as much as we're talking about the end of that little subplot. We know that with O'Banion,
Right.
Right.
things are going to heat up so much worse.
Yeah.
That's that's going to escalate, and we know through history that I think O'Banion has another 5. They're in 23, so O'Banion's got another 6 years. It all comes to a head, I think in 29.
Right.
Um,
Wait, was this 22? I thought this year was
23.
1923. It is 23?
23.
Yeah, they just
It,
had
was-
New
it was
Year's.
we started with the
A
New
New
Year.
Year's. I always thought it was 22.
Um,
Okay.
All right, Marissa, what's up with the AfterBuzz fall schedule?
Well, Kevin,
What?
our fall schedule is in full swing now. We're doing about 55 shows a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're doing a lot. And like Boardwalk Empire.
Marissa's saying she
Jersey
wants a day off.
Shore.
Oh my God. Well,
Never said that.
is that what she said?
No, that's what she's
Kidding.
saying.
You're costing me my job for that. And so we have a lot of shows coming up, and if there's a show out there, there's a good chance we're probably covering it. So
Yeah.
make sure to tune into AfterBuzz TV fall schedule.
Maybe you can go to AfterBuzzTV.com. Is that where we have it up?
Yes, AfterBuzzTV.com.
Very cool. And I think it's so funny with Homeland. I'm kind of glad I thought I'd be doing that show because I was a fan of it last season, but it butts up against this one.
Okay.
And all I'm gonna say is I love Homeland. It's a great show, but made the right
You
choice.
made the right choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
That's all I'll say. Don't want to besmirch the show. It's a great show.
He's just
But-
talking about the panel, actually.
But
Right.
Us
yes,
too.
it is a panel. You're right.
For sure.
It's a great panel. Okay, so finally we talk about New York and Meyer Lansky, Benny, Lucky, and Masseria. Now, it was interesting. Today I was, just trying to brush up on my research, and it was so great that I did because everything that I read about all came to fruition. But Masseria was known as a Mustache Pete. And a Mustache Pete was known as an old-time mobster. It was the guys right out of Italy, right out of the old world, right out of the old country, right out of Sicily. And they had a very old world way of doing business. But if you weren't 100% Italian or Sicilian, they
Didn't mess with you.
they didn't want any business. They didn't want you around. You were not in. You were not to be trusted. And they didn't even want to do business with you.
Right.
And very progressive, that Lucky comes in with Meyer and is introducing a new way
Right.
of gangster life or mafia life. And there's a conflict between the old guard and the Muppet Babies, the new guard, in real history, I'm saying. And it's all based on this. And the irony is this Masseria says they'll stab you in the back or whatever. And the irony is that nobody was closer partners than Meyer and Lucky. And their run was a very, very long run.
Right.
And they totally had each other's backs. Also had Rothstein's back as long as they could.
Right.
Right.
And so it was very interesting.
But we see that today even, like generationally in terms of acceptance of kind of breaking down historical
With the old guard not
Yes,
accepting the new
yes,
ways. Of course.
absolutely, yeah,
It's been
yeah.
going on forever.
yeah, younger
things-
generation's always more accepting of that.
And things seem to change because the old isn't always working. So you have these old guys,
You always have that.
right.
Yeah.
And
You
so, you have to adjust with the times and
I see it with our business all the time.
yeah.
All the time. But
I'm a traditionalist. I like to stick with the old. In a sense, because
Oh
I
my
kind of grew up,
God.
in a sense, because I had that family,
Right.
the Italian family. I had a half Irish, half Italian family, so I really had this, just kind of old-fashioned. Like I said, with the Margaret and the nun, I really felt like, in a sense, I've heard my mom's
What,
not
you,
like
you
that,
were
but I've
taking up
heard
for the nun?
no, oh God, no, but I say God with a capital G too. I'm very
All right, good.
respectful.
Nice job.
But no, I'm, you know, I come from that kind of where my mom wasn't like that, but she would tell stories about, you know, being uncomfortable having women's products and things like that. And, you know, I know I just heard it growing up so much. Anyway.
It was very interesting that Joe, he kept calling him Salvatore. You know, we've known him as Lucky Luciano or Charlie, whatever.
Right.
But the fact he kept saying Salvatore, he was just
trying to remind him.
That's right.
Being a sellout, because basically he was summoned to be called a sellout.
Right.
Point blank. Period.
So he's speaking Italian, and Lucky's throwing out the English, and but he doesn't shoot him. He sits at the window. He doesn't shoot him. But we see that they're far away in negotiations.
Yes,
Meyer says
3 to 30%.
2, settle at 5, and he's like, I want 30. So it's like, wow. So things are heating up like crazy.
Yeah. Do you think that Lucky would have been better off there with someone like Meyer, or wouldn't he
No.
have even spoken?
No.
He wouldn't have even sat at the table with them.
Because Lucky doesn't have, when he's alone, he's not going to have any, backup.
Has to be alone though, but he has to because he knew like they're animals. They would have they would have just snapped.
Right.
They would have just it would have been a complete disconnect.
Right.
They wouldn't have even been able to have the conversation.
Right.
Period. Point blank.
Right. I'm just wondering how Lucky's going to get. Not. I wonder how Lucky's not going to do the 30% when he doesn't have anyone else on his side to back him up. He's gonna cave in and he's gonna say okay to the 30% because he doesn't have those guys on his side the way Masseria does.
He's Muppet Baby, so he may have to play along for a little while.
Right.
Sure.
The other thing is with Lucky and Meyer. They both get credit for setting up modern day organized crime.
Right.
They were the ones who said, you know what, let's make this more of a corporation. Let's organize. We have these 5 families. I think Lucky ends up running the Javanese family. He's the first leader of the Javanese family, but they're the ones that get all the families working together. And of course, 29 is the massacre, but it's and they survived that. But interesting characters, and the actor, I just think he plays it so well. You can see it in the scene. He hated being in that position, but he had to be.
Right.
Right. So we'll be seeing more. Now, you were saying something about the actor playing Masseria. What were you saying?
I was saying that he looked. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and so when he first got on the screen, he looked Creole to me. He looked very ethnic, what we call a touch of the brush. Like he almost looked like he could have been a black guy, quite frankly. But as we were discussing earlier, like with the Sicilian, there's just so much kind of hybridness ethnically.
Right. And they're so like, no, we're not. We're Sicilian. We're our own thing. Like, no.
Well, that's how Creoles are. Even they even say we're not black, and that
we're
way
Creole.
we're Creole.
Right.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
What Lucky in real life they founded the commission, Lucky and Meyer Lansky, which was I think what you were just mentioning. Yeah, the commission.
Which is they organized everybody.
Right.
And it's interesting. If you wanted to like do research on those guys, like their careers really kicked in the 30s and the 40s, went all the way to Cuba, and then launching Vegas. I mean, like these guys were like, this is nothing.
Right.
They're mother babies. We're scratching the surface. Good stuff. Okay, so finally,
the good stuff.
Discussing Nucky and Owen, and of course our little friend Roland.
Yeah. I thought the Nucky-Owen relationship was the most interesting one of this entire episode because it was just constant tension in terms of the trust issues that are clearly going on with those two. That was really incredible.
I feel like he earlier in the series, he had a real relationship with his brother. He had a real relationship with Jimmy.
Right.
I mean, these guys really had his back, and he could trust them.
Right.
We know Owen slept with his wife. And he's not, I don't know, Owen's, even the fact that Doyle, asked
defers
Owen,
to him.
defers to Owen in the meeting in front of everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the fact that Owen shows up late when he says,
Right.
read the paper, get to my place immediately, shows up late.
When he wants to.
When he wants to.
Well, I think Nucky's going to be is really the source of his own undoing because he's not really great at keeping relationships, and he had to ask Owen, "Why do you support me?" And it wasn't.
Now this is when they were in the basement drinking, right?
Right.
It was.
Right.
It was. I like that scene because Nucky's had this guard up. He had it up at the beginning.
Right. The guard. Right.
Of the show, at the episode, and at the end, and we're seeing it more and more. And the guard's
Right.
getting more and more. He's just becoming this really.
But it's not going to help him in the long run.
No.
It's going to hurt him.
in that moment of weakness, they hadn't slept, guards dropped. It was back to being more human Nucky.
Right.
So I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting how this is going.
I have to say, in defense of my dear friend Enoch, Malachi Thompson, that I would see why he would be guarded, though. I mean, your brother tried to
100%,
kill you.
that's
I mean,
right.
this is not coming from nowhere. He
100%.
doesn't know who to trust at this point, quite frankly. So I really liked that moment that you just spoke of when Owen did verbally just let him know, look, like, I'm down for you. I'm loyal to you. Nucky did ask him why, and he told him why, because you made a space for me.
But then he also said, but you pay me.
Well, yeah, that's true.
You know, so it can be a fleeting relationship. Nucky is obviously going to be out in the cold. I don't want to get into predictions, but he might not have the money to pay Owen, you know, for maybe a little while. Owen could leave. Owen could side with
whereas
Jip,
Jimmy, he would always been there without the
Right.
money. Early Jimmy.
There's a family bond there. Nucky doesn't have that.
And Eli as well, you know, might have in the past. And you're right, and he doesn't have it.
But what were those family bonds even worth? Because we saw both Eli and
they went
Jimmy
the other way.
go the other way.
They went the other way. And, of course, which is what makes Nucky the way he is. I understand where Nucky's coming from. But he's making some mistakes in being so reactionary.
Right.
You know, by saying, for instance, by telling Eli, that's the last gift you're getting.
Right.
You know, you bring your enemies closer,
Right.
or you keep them totally away.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's got him in there, I get having him do a low-level job, keeping away from but don't tell him. Don't tell him. Don't incite him. And we'll talk about their relationship, you know, as we end the podcast. But it was interesting with how Roland played them both. I'm 16. I've never smoked.
Right.
I feel like that might have had a role in Nucky shooting him. Because
Of
he
course.
tricked
Of
Nucky.
Of course. And then the fact that he slept and he's like, and Nucky said, I don't know what he cares about. And remember, and that to me, I took that as a little bit of a callback to the fact that Jimmy, by the end, said he didn't care. He had seen so much death, he didn't care.
Right.
And of course, we know Jimmy, that part of Jimmy had to be killed, not the little kid Jimmy that he raised. And so.
Because you can't trust somebody that has nothing to lose. You just can't.
Right.
Right.
But I saw Roland as possibly a new Jimmy. If he let him in.
Possibly, but he knows what happened with Jimmy, so he's like, nope. So that's why we got to nip this in the bud.
Right. Right.
And then we see Owen and him draw guns on each other. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's foreshadowing.
I think that was absolutely telling of Owen, again, still not knowing that he's fully trusted by Nucky because of everything that's going on with those two. And Nucky was like letting him know, like, don't misunderstand. This is what happens to people that cross me. Just so you know.
Just so you know how it goes.
And Owen seemed pretty upset with him for shooting him. Obviously, he can't
Definitely.
say it, but he's mad. Now, I don't think...
Mad or just, and also stunned, like, wow.
Right. Like, you're crazy. You're crazier than I thought you were.
Right. You were really, like, cold.
Right.
And,
but that's what but that, in a way, could keep people in line, could keep Owen in line, not knowing what Nucky's going to do.
Yes.
I mean, that's what he's
I'm saying
going
all the
for.
obvious right now.
But
no, that's true.
No, not at all. And what was interesting... One of the triggers, let's go upstairs. There's bacon and eggs upstairs. And so this has been the big thing about bacon and cooking and you know, making breakfast, and it was all like a tie back to that.
Right. Now, do we think that has to do with Nucky's mom? Is that what you guys have been saying from previous episodes?
I take that from, you know, I'll talk about it with our catches of the week. We have some great catches of the week from superfan Mike August, but we also have now something we call AfterBlog.
Right.
So AfterBuzzTV.com/AfterBlog. Would that take you there, Marissa?
That is correct.
Okay, so we have Jason Squamata. He's an amazing writer. In fact, him and I are doing a novel together that should be out in another 6 months or a year. But he's an amazing writer, and he has been writing some blogs since the first episode. So check him out. Just much more expansive than what we're going over. But one of the things he was saying, and I guess now's a good time as any for me to tell you what was in last week's blog about the whole breakfast scene and the dream sequence. Right. Remember the dream sequence? Yes. He said, Nucky's subtly fixing the kid breakfast like he would for his mom in his early years of abject poverty. Nucky wants to take care of people. But Billy, his little
side piece.
His little side piece. But Billy doesn't want to be his kept woman. Jimmy didn't want to be his underling. And through a veil of sizzling bacon vapor, little boy Jimmy is bleeding through a hole in his face, an embodied judgment of Nucky's deep hypocrisy. The frying pan is now a smoking gun. Nucky wants to take care of people until they obstruct his business maneuvers. Then he wants them gone. He may have decided that he can't be half a gangster, but the half of him that wasn't a gangster lives on in his dreams of his loss, longing and shame.
Right.
Kind of interesting, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, really
I
interesting.
thought that was a great take. So please continue to check out Afterblog for that and other blogs, but I also think that to me was a pretty good explanation of what all that means.
I thought it was interesting too that we were reminded of the non-gangster side of Nucky in this episode with Roland talking about, oh, when I was 6, you gave my mom and our family a turkey.
Yep.
And for that moment, we kind of remember, oh yeah, he used to be kind of a
Kinda
halfway
nice.
nice guy.
Right, and and using that charm, that decency, which helped him get the power.
Right.
Right.
But that definitely talks back to helping Jimmy and how he helped people and how with his mom and all that.
Right.
As the kid's saying that, was Nucky being seduced by him, or did he know all along, I'm going to shoot him?
I like to think that he had a soft side for a minute.
I think so too.
But tying in the cigarette from the beginning and the cigarette at the end, I think he was holding that cigarette knowing I'm going to give this back to him. Because he offered Roland a cigarette when they were originally going to shoot him before the feds showed up. Do you remember that? And
Yes.
then, then they go through the basement, and then as soon as the kid takes out a cigarette, it seems like Nucky's waiting to give him that cigarette he was going to give him before, his last smoke, before he shoots him.
So
I think Nucky was going to shoot him the whole time.
the whole time, even you don't think he
I
thought about it?
want to think he thought about it, but even in his tired stupor, I don't think Nucky's softening at all. I think he's pretty cold.
I think for a second I wanted to think he was maybe toying with it, but now that I kind of go back to the 2 episodes ago, when he killed the guy who gave him Roland Smith's name, I think he's just, if you steal from me, this is what happens. Period. Point blank.
Right.
Right. I think he was really shooting him as a way to speak to Owen. I really do. I really feel like he feels like Owen's getting out from under his his grasp, and by showing, because we're really intimidated by Jip, and I know we'll get to Jip, but Jip's unpredictable, and that's why you're scared of him.
Right.
That's
And I
true.
think if Nucky becomes unpredictable, then Owen will listen better. People will start perching up and giving them his ear.
I do think Nucky is tired of
their ear.
being second guessed.
Right.
He said that
Right.
2 or 3 times at
Right.
the beginning of the episode. Anybody else want to second guess me? Even freaking idiot.
Doyle?
Yeah.
I want to know why he didn't get more upset when Eli said they were taking the original route.
Who, Doyle?
Why?
When-
I'm sorry.
When
When Nucky didn't get.
when Eli informed Nucky that they were taking the route Nucky didn't want
that
them
was
to.
Owen.
That was
Oh,
Owen.
Owen
It was
informed him.
Owen.
Okay,
It
sorry.
wasn't. It didn't come from Eli.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. When Owen said it, I was just surprised that Nucky didn't get more upset.
He was upset, and they said, "But the roads are clear." So he's probably like, "Oh, okay. Well, the word came back that the roads are clear." Now,
I was just hoping that Nucky would know better, that the roads are never clear. That you always have to be on.
but I mean, if he
defense.
gets a report, I mean, I would think you would say, "Okay, fine. Let's just get the booze there."
Right.
And so now that's gonna not be the case, and we see with Doyle, who we know is just such a amazing sleaze, and we see Eli, continuing to show
Loyalty. Which I was
loyalty and
surprised.
brains,
Yes.
and Doyle's like, know your place, blah blah blah, and of course Jip being a thug and B just very good at charming people. He charms the cops. They're all shaking hands. We're all going to make a lot of money.
Yep.
And Eli's like, oh my God, it's an ambush. And of course they don't listen, and they all just get gunned down. And you really get to see what thugs they are, because they're literally pickpocketing
Pickpocketing.
them.
Corpses.
Right.
Yeah.
They're the
This is a
lowest.
cool wall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really low end.
Yeah.
Super low end.
Super low end.
Yeah.
Which they'd have to be anyways to get in bed with Jip, but yeah.
Right.
And then you see Jip really having zero care about
Oh.
what just happened, because
He's
he's
a
talking about sex
sociopath,
and which
yeah.
girl is better looking.
And
you know?
remember, he said, Nucky said, Roland doesn't care, and
Right.
that's why he had to die. And
Right.
Jimmy said he didn't care, which is why, and this is why Jip has to die, because
Right.
he doesn't care.
Right.
Right.
He doesn't have the tact or the panache
No.
that a classy gangster would have.
He has enough of it, though.
He does.
He has
he
enough of
wins
it.
me
He can
over.
turn it on when he needs to.
Right.
But
to work with the other men, I don't think I think with women or people that are below him,
He
but
just
when
lets
he works,
stuff get too personal too, right?
Right.
Everything's so personal with this kid.
Right.
It's gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you know, I kept thinking the whole time, like, when Nucky told Eli, "That's the last gift I've given you," as much as I said, "Geez, that was a mistake. Don't, you know, be like that." I was bummed because I said, "Geez, I think these two will never get on the same page again." And yet, great writing. I was surprised
Yes.
to see at the end, not can I talk to you? And then it's like, what now? And if you notice that the camera went further and further away. So it started out with, you know, coverage on right on them, and then it was shooting through the window,
Right.
and then it was a super wide shot.
Mhm.
And the song cranked up and them just walking, which to me is great writing.
And the song lyrics were something like "I miss you, buddy,"
Right.
or "I miss my buddy."
Right.
Right.
So
But the fact that we didn't get into a whole this is what
Dialogue.
happened and no one listened to me.
Right.
Doyle refused to listen, but I called the whole thing. I tried to save them. They wouldn't listen. If you just
Right.
let me listen,
Right.
Knock, I can help you. And no, that to me is great writing. Less is more. Show, don't tell.
Exactly.
All those like rules of like really good writing were totally obeyed.
yeah.
And I loved it. And so we now led to believe that these two get back together.
It's horrible.
Not as love,
No.
not as like love,
No.
but as that they'll work and respect one another.
Nucky needs him. He
Oh.
really does.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
and I think he knows
needs
he
him.
does.
He needs him, but he could be stupid, you know, and not use that. But now do we feel like they're going to get on the same page?
I think I'm a little less forgiving than most. So I was kind of feeling where Nucky was coming from on this. Stay in your place. You haven't earned anything, really. You're lucky to even have this little crappy piece of shit job. But I think this was exactly what needed to happen for them to kind of take that wall down and give Eli a real opportunity to show allegiance and truly earn his way
Right.
back into good
Right.
graces.
Right.
Right. Like this was a good thing for Eli in a
Yes.
sense.
And for
Yes.
Nucky, because Nucky needs
Yes.
him.
and
Yeah.
for the
You
relationship.
can't. I mean, Owen banged his wife, and he's in bed, you know, with some floozy,
Right.
Right.
showing up late.
And again, I think we're going to see more of Richard.
We need Richard. No, we
know.
gotta. No, Nucky
Richard's
and
so bad,
Nucky.
yeah.
Nucky
Well,
needs
speaking
Richard
of-
and Chalky.
Speaking of Richard, he really didn't. I mean, he really didn't humble. He really didn't humble
Doyle.
Doyle.
Right.
You know, you would think maybe there would be a little bit of that left over in Doyle from last week when
He had his
Richard really
pants around his
scared
ankle,
him.
Right.
Yeah, but you can't. A guy like Doyle, you have to just kill.
Right.
Those just
Right.
weasels never
They're just
change.
gonna come back. They're like a bug. or-
They're really,
yeah.
that's what it is. They just keep coming back. I always say, like,
Stronger
you
even.
ever go to the beach and like you've got the seagulls there, and or at least on the East Coast, and you're eating something, and they all like start to creep up to your blanket, and you go and they all like flutter away. And then just
Then they
give it
come-
like 50 minutes.
Right.
They start
They come
creeping up,
back.
creeping up again.
Right, right,
You know, and that's
right.
Doyle.
Right.
So I totally buy that. Yeah, he got his little
He's the
spook
fly
for
in
the
your soup.
moment. Yeah, he's
Right.
never gonna stop.
Yeah.
Until you kill him.
He's not.
Until you kill him. Not that he even has to die, because he is what he is.
The
you
minute
know.
he gets an ounce of power, he's just gonna run with it, and he doesn't think it's not gonna be
No.
the right move. You know, he's just an idiot.
Interesting though how they're not letting the information out about the killing of the butcher.
Yeah.
Right. They haven't because Nucky said, "Oh yeah, where is he again?" Or
Yeah,
something like
just
that,
good.
alluding to like
holding
very
his
casually.
cards close to
Right.
his chest,
Right.
and just knowing Richard did it, but
Clearly.
Right.
Right.
you know he must feel there's more power.
Yeah. Do you think that Richard's gonna now get closer to Nucky because Nucky doesn't really have anybody, and
We
from last
we
week?
feel as though they're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need him.
Right.
We
He
need him in
definitely
the
needs
army.
him. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We need him. We need some
Some
badasses.
strong recruits.
Yeah, we totally need him.
Yeah. I thought Owen was gonna be more of a badass than he is.
He
Owen's
started out
being
as
too
one.
He started out as one totally, and then he kind of fizzled a little bit. He seems like he's gotten a little soft.
Well, I have a whole theory, and I can say this because I'm a woman, that so there's a saying that when you chase, you lose a lot of money chasing women, but you never lose women chasing money.
Mm.
And I think when you look at Nucky and Billy, he was totally distracted and out of his wits the last couple seasons.
Yeah, that's what you guys do to us.
And basically, right? And now that I don't know where she's at, New York on Broadway, he's back focused in the game. His head's back in the game.
Right.
I think we're seeing that with Owen. You know, you're too busy up in Margaret's face, you're in Katie's face, you're being a hot mess. He needs to leave all that alone and get his head back in the
Yep.
game.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why Richard's doing so good, because he's
It's
celibate.
yeah, he's out of it. You're right. This is actually a book about that too. It's like why, like with guys, it's just such a distraction to your business. If you
It
could
is.
just focus, it's not just women; it's sex. If you can just
Right.
get
Right.
your mind off sex,
Right.
It's true.
then you can do well. I'm I love seeing Al Capone in this, and I'm glad that Eli and Nucky had that nice walk in the wide shot.
Right.
It made me feel good. Because I get where Nucky has to be at odds with Eli, and Eli obviously went to places that you shouldn't really be able to come back from.
That's what I say.
But at the same time, he's,
I think Eli's sorry. I think he knows. He can recognize.
Yep.
That he looks like a.
I think it feels like it. You feel, and what a great actor, how he's playing it. You see such a longing in his face.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just no color, and just broken, and going from wearing that nice uniform to just kind of the clothes of what the raggedy commoners would wear back then.
Yeah, he's wearing it well. He's not obstructing his bounds. He's staying within what he's supposed to be doing. He's not talking back.
He's not resentful.
He's not resentful.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help him grow. Because if he was, then he would be the same as Doyle. Just making bad decisions and left and right.
Well, listen, let's go to news and gossip, and then we'll do catches.
Okay, so I have happy news to report that HBO officially renewed Boardwalk Empire for its 4th season last week.
I love that.
Thank you.
Should be a given.
Should be a given, yeah, it's going to be awesome. So this is interesting. So the HuffPost did a piece last week really praising Boardwalk along with Mad Men and some BBC show,
Rightfully
Copper, about doing New York's history right. That's kind of what it was really neat. Yeah, just talking about how the historical accuracy is just really on point there, and we always talk about how that is. The heroin deals taking place on the Upper East Side, and that being correct. Billy's apartment on the Upper West Side. They talked about how the shots and everything really pay correct homage to the city life. I guess the show is filmed in a studio in Brooklyn, and they're anticipating that we'll get more outside shots that are real on location, correct to the history
Is the boardwalk also in a studio? And do they use green screen?
It's on a river. My friend actually lives down the street in Brooklyn.
Okay.
It's built on a river, and she's walked by it several times. So it's outside.
It is outside.
The boardwalk is outside.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So anyways, they're just really, I guess paying tribute to just how well the show is done in terms of geographical.
The details of the show are insane. Even the money, money back then was actually a little wider. You see that. It's just everything. It just feels so authentic.
It's great. It's one of my favorite things, and I'm always looking at their numbers because, we need those for this show to continue on. And I think the finale got 3 million, and now we're down in the 2s for 2 million viewers, and so.
It's is it too smart of a show? I think people
or too niche or whatever,
right.
But it's scary because we gotta stay feels like 2 million or better to justify the expense.
Right.
Being
It is a
put
very
into this.
expensive
So I want the show to keep going. I love it. I mean, I would hate if they get one more season and then they have to wrap up 6 or 7 years worth of history.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, that's good news.
But
so
at least
far.
we got one more season for
good.
sure in the bag. So, all right, that's our news and gossip.
All right, very good. Okay, so now catches of the week from our friend Mike August. And Marissa, will you remember to have Sir Richard Wentworth create some kind of drop? We need a catches he's created the AfterBuzz catches of the week.
Definitely, we'll get on that.
Well, that's the one I use.
Just use that.
All right, that's good. So from our dear superfan Mike August about Bone Fortuna, our last episode. He says, Margaret is looking like a gangster and wore her trademark hat like the gangsters throughout the episode, getting her power through the church, and showed she can be very influential and manipulative when talking to the bishop. And it is ironic that the Catholic Church has always been more corrupt than the mafia. So that's interesting. Jip, and this is going to speak to your point, Ebony, about chasing women.
Oh, great.
And Jip is self-conscious. That guys think he's stupid, yet he lets his guard down around women. Such as when he admits he didn't understand the poetry in the brothel. That may come into play with Jillian, who is a sly fox and can use that against him if needed. Ties further into the season's theme of women being underestimated at that time in history. And Jillian already knows she can control Jip by telling him that Eli and Nucky are not on good terms with one another. So it's very, very interesting. But that speaks to your point. And, it's funny to look at the brothel in Chicago.
Just messy.
Gross compared
hot mess.
Right.
Hot mess.
You can feel the steam.
Compared to Jillian's. So you
Right.
you see the difference with what she's doing,
Yeah.
and speaks more to that point. All right. So for predictions,
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
I think Mickey Doyle is going to get it. Like
Ooh.
this can't go on. I think this is just absolutely. He's costing way too much. First of all, you adamantly disobeyed a direct order from Nucky Thompson. We are seeing already you're not getting away with that type of crap anymore.
nobody's
this
getting away with
season.
that anymore.
So
So you think he's going to get it
yeah, he's gonna get. If not next episode, for sure in
by
the
the end of the season?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what else? Or does he may even get demoted and Eli may take over?
Right.
At the least.
So,
right.
but what else? You've got to have other predictions. So we saw a lot go
Sure.
on there. We're going to see.
Well, I mean, the Rothstein and Jip connection obviously is going to grow and grow, and
Yeah, so-
Nucky is just going to be out.
So Rothstein just goes, okay, I need my booze.
Yeah,
so-
you got the
Right,
booze.
you got it.
figured out a way to get it. I want you on my team. You know, obviously, if Nucky can't figure it out, you know, and he's got this much experience, then like, why am I wasting my time with him?
Yeah, he's not the
Wow.
only game in town anymore.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Jip could be fleeting, but for the time being, he'll
Oh,
be in.
I think Chip by the end of the season or by the end of next season, he'll get wrapped,
Right.
and
Right.
there'll be another villain. But and we're gonna see Chalky, which I'm excited about.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Van Alden, hopefully.
Oh, and Van
Van
Alden.
I
Alden.
have to say though, I disagree
No.
with your theory.
Oh, what?
You think he's going to start working with the mafia, doing the
Yeah,
booze
he
stuff.
has to.
No.
Why do you-
He's
oh.
way too much of a maniac in terms of his like religious background to do that. I think he's just going to go the opposite direction,
But
and
he
I think
can't
he's going
work
to
with
try
the
to
authorities.
work against on his own. I think that's what
Oh.
personally I think he's still going to try to get them to stop because, he is who he is. I don't
Yeah,
think
but-
he would back
But I don't
back
know.
out of
But
that.
we don't know how much of him. It's just he's extreme. So I don't know if he's really a good person or if he's just an extremist.
I think he's an extremist, but I think he's stuck in what he believes in.
She thinks she's morally convicted on it.
Yeah,
see
I
what
don't
she's
think
saying.
I just don't think he would be comfortable to actually, because when he was in the bar where they were all partying or drinking, you could tell he didn't want to
He
be
didn't wanna
there.
be
He was
there.
uncomfortable.
But
That's
he may
not
wanna-
his setting.
But he may make money off it. Here's the interesting thing. You might be right because the obvious thing seems as though he's going to go work for O'Banion.
Right.
That's
Right.
the obvious
It
thing.
seems
and
obvious.
a good writer is going to go, no.
Right.
Too safe.
Oh, so we'll see. I
Maybe
hope
he'll
he-
use O'Banion to get back in
maybe.
the circuit, but I don't think
Maybe.
he's going to be helping him.
I just, but it's funny because he's gonna. It seems like next week he's gonna get terrorized more from the workers.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I need to see him get some power
He's
back.
amazing.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh,
Okay,
God.
you guys, thank you so much. Please rate and comment. Send questions to info@AfterBuzzTV.com. If you're single, Marissa is too. Anyway, okay. You guys will see each other next week.
Where can they find you guys?
Oh, thank you, Marissa. I'm bad. Where can I find you guys? Ebony, where?
You can find me on Twitter at EBONI_K, Ebony K.
And you can find me at Kristen Carney. It's KRISTEN CARNEY.
Anyway, and you know what? You can't find me. You know why? You can't hit what you can't see.
Bam!
Wow.
See ya.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.